Hey, listen, we're going to try some different things. I guess we're actually going to record this one today. So thanks for picking this topic for us to record, for being one of the first lessons. Hey, listen, what I actually had you guys do is fill out those papers a little bit earlier. For those listening to this recording, you didn't get to participate in that survey because you weren't here. That's okay, though. Everything's going to be all right. If you want the survey, you can get it later on. But I wanted you to hold on to these, and if you're done with them, you can go ahead and pass them to the center there, and then we'll get somebody to collect those up. But I thought we'd get started by me reading you a little bit of poetry, because I found this. I don't know. Can you hear me breathing? Is that better? I'm looking for you, Chelsea. Okay. All right. We're good. So let me read you a little bit of poetry I found here, because it's pretty good. And what it says here, it says, and I wish I would have thought of this, man. This would have helped me out. Oh, beautiful are your feet in sandals, O noble daughter. Your rounded thighs are like jewels, the work of a master's hand. Your navel is a rounded bowl that never lacks mixed wine. Your belly is a heap of wheat encircled with lilies. Your two breasts are like two fawns, twins of a gazelle. Your neck is like an ivory tower. Your eyes are the pools of Heshbon by the gates of Bethrabim. Your nose is like a tower of Lebanon, which looks down toward Damascus. Your head crowns you like a Carmel, and your flowing locks are like purple. A king is held captive in the tresses. How beautiful and pleasant are you, O loved one with your delights. Your stature is like a palm tree, and your breasts are like its clusters. I say I will climb the palm tree and lay hold of its fruits. O may your breasts be like clusters of vine, and the scent of your breasts like apples, and your palate like the best wine. It goes down smoothly, for my beloved glides the lips and teeth. I am my beloved's, and his desires for me. Come, my beloved, let us go out into the fields and lodge in the villages. Let us go to the vineyards, and see whether the vines have budded, whether the grapes blossom have opened, and the pomegranates are in bloom. There I will give you my love. The mandrakes give forth fragrance, and besides our doors are all the choice fruits, new as well as old, which I have laid up for you, O my beloved. There are a lot of things I'm a fan of, right? I mean, I'm a fan of pizza. You know I am. I am a fan of attempting golf. I'm a fan of wrestling, though you may have not known that or not. I'm even a fan of those dumb games on your phone. You guys know the ones I'm talking about? The ones when we should be doing schoolwork or whatever, but you're I gotta match these three to get the bomb to blow up the other one, right? And right now I'm on this one level where you not only do you have to match it all up, but you gotta blow the balloons up, send the balloons over, and match the water bottles with the correct color. And it drives me crazy because I've been on this level for like a week and a half now, and I'm working on it, but yet I'm a big fan of it, even though it frustrates me. The other thing I'm a fan of is sex. I enjoy it. Now, let me tell you, our topic today is going to be very mature. And I'm not talking about the birds and the bees, right? That's not the purpose of this topic. But what we are going to talk about is the sex as God constituted it for us, and what's the context of that, and where does it fit in. And you might be asking yourself, well, Theo, why are you talking on the topic of sex? Well, because just so you know, recent studies have shown that 10-year-olds as young as 10 are engaged in sexual activities. In fact, there's all kinds of apps, right? Let me see your phone real fast, Chelsea. No, I'm just joking. But there's these apps, right? Even for hooking up. Who's heard of Tinder? It's okay to raise your hand. So nobody, you guys are the good group over here. Bunch of sinners over here. Now look, no, Tinder, in case you didn't know what it was, is an app that pops up and says, hey, this person's in your area and they want to hook up. Right? And so there's this app called Tinder that people actually do that. Right? Block your ears. It's true, though. And the kids are using that to run around different various places in high schools and hooking up and having sex. So I'm like, it blows my mind, right, that this app even exists. You know, something else is not even full-blown sex, right? Here you go. Watch all the faces, parents. Are you ready? I wish you could be up here and see what I'm getting ready to say. Who's heard of the app TikTok? Okay. Yeah. Listen up, parents. TikTok is a lot of fun. It's a silly little app, right, where you can mimic things. And like you lip sync these different songs and everything. And it's really funny. And like there's different like apps, like there's one going on now called the Punch Challenge, right? Where if you punch the screen, it looks like the screen is bouncing. What's another one that's out there right now? There's other ones. Because I've already looked at your accounts, kids. Okay? I've already, in preparation for this, look, they're like, oh my gosh. But let me tell you right now, if you don't know what TikTok is, I suggest you take a look at it. Because while there's a lot of great things that can be used with TikTok and it's fun, what I don't necessarily find appropriate is a 12-year-old girl or a 13-year-old girl wearing half clothes on, twerking or whatever that is, and all these other crazy things that go on with it. But it happens. And a lot of times we don't even realize it's going on. But these are all things that are happening with our youth and with our young folks. You know that poem I read to you? Did any of you all recognize that actually? It is. It's from the Song of Songs. Also known as Song of Solomon. And also known as the Kettim, which means actually in Hebrew the writings. And so that particular part right there of Song of Solomon, which Solomon was later added on, so we're not really even quite sure how he got added, but somehow he gets credit, was actually made up of 5 books. And those 5 books included Ruth, Lamentations, Ecclesia, and Esther. And that makes up the Megillah, right? Which are the 5 scrolls that are read during different types of celebrations in the church. And what's really interesting is in the Passover, right, the Pesach, or the Peshel, that the Song of Solomon, the Song of Songs, is what's read during the time of them remembering God passing over them through the angel and them being given mercy. Then again, as we morph that into that, right, and today, of course, we know that Jesus laid over his communion over the Passover, which we talked about a few weeks ago. What's interesting, though, is that this poem, while it's accredited to Solomon often, actually was all the way back in 10 BC, during the time of David. So this is something that's, part of their history. Now, recently, in more later editions, right, when Solomon's name got added to that, it was a collection, they recognized it as a collection of poems spoken alternatively between the man and the woman. And so it was an engaging of conversation that took place with one another. And these poems are very systematic and it describes the beauty of what's called the beloved. And so it's this guy talking to his girl, right? Saying, hey, baby, what's up? No? Well, okay, I'm not as poetic as them. But that's basically what's happening. And so what ends up happening is in Jewish literature, right? In Jewish literature, oftentimes, much later Jewish literature or Jewish theologies, they say, well, see, this is a conversation between God and his people. And the Christians went ahead and said, well, wait. It's actually a metaphor, right, and a drama of Jesus in his church. And then there's another group of mysticism, which we studied, I think about 3 weeks ago, when we're doing this early morning study right now. You get a chance on Sunday mornings, what we're doing is going through the history of Christianity, right? And we started from the very beginning, and this time we talked about the Great Schism. But a few weeks ago, we talked about this mysticism, the Gnostics, and these other different groups. And what they believed is that it was a relationship, or describing a relationship between Jesus and the soul. What I'm here to tell you, though, is why all those have been traditionally taught. What's interesting about all other Semitic type literatures, or Jewish literature from that time period, is that there is no drama. Meaning there is no engaged conversating back and forth. So then what are we to take this as? Are we take it to be to some type of metaphor and type of drama? I would say there's one way of looking at it, but possibly a fourth interpretation, right, is that it's a collection of these poems, right, that celebrate the joyness or the joy and the goodness of a human relationship between the sexes and the sense of inner fulfillment between them. These are some of the things we kind of take away and we look at when we start looking at it. So, it's in the Bible, right? Sex is in the Bible. Like, see, even now, uncomfortably, I want to say it. But sex is in the Bible, and it's talked about in the Bible. It's got a basically entire book of the Bible. So why don't we talk about it more often? Well, I think part of it is that sex has been actually put out there to be say it's not modest to talk about sex. We can't talk about it. Right? We just can't. It's not to be discussed in the church, even though the church is people, and even though it's in the Bible. So what we do is we ignore it. We ignore the topic altogether often. When I was growing up, man, you did not even talk about it with anybody, or anybody came near to you. I think I've shared this with some of you. Do you guys know how I learned about sex? It's through Playboy magazines, when my cousin gave them to me. Check this out, right? I'm 12 years old, and nobody's had the sex talk with me, and I'm not giving it to you today. That's for your parents to give to you. But if they're not willing, you come see me, and I'll talk to you. But what I'm going to tell you is that's how I found out about it. Now, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to guess that wasn't the healthiest of environments for me to learn about sex. But nobody was talking about it in the church. And nobody was willing to say, hey, you know, what are you going through right now as a 13-year-old boy, 12-year-old, 13-year-old boy? Or a girl. Not a girl because I'm a boy, but you understand what I'm saying. You know, what are your feelings? What are you going through? Because it's not to be talked about in the church. But let me tell you what, it's part of everyday conversation in the world. It's a normal point of conversation. And it is a normal topic. I mean, you tell me if I'm wrong, but, you know, when I was in high school, I don't know if it's changed too much. Does anybody think about or talk about sex in high school today? A lot. Does anybody get talked to about sex when maybe they're on the bus or when they're with their friends? Yeah, it's going on all around. And so one of the problems is that we as a church say, well, we're not going to talk about it, which means we negate our responsibilities to teach what God has about or has to teach about it. So how did we come to this point that we had such a negative reputation or negative view of sex? Well, if you guys were part of the class, right, when we were talking about the early church history, one of the things that was talked about is Augustine. Augustine, he was one of the early church fathers, and this guy was a bad dude at first. I mean, he ran around, he slept with anything that he could, he got drunk all the time, got tore up, and then he began having these different engagements in this relationship that develops with Jesus, and then he turns out to be one of our church fathers. Well, all through his writings, especially in his writings of the Confessions, what's called the Confessions, he's very, very hard on himself for the sexual immorality that he committed during that time frame. And he writes about it, saying how he was wrong to do these things, and he was wrong to take advantage of people, and that sex has a context. Well, one thing that he never does in that is condemn sex. He never says sex is evil. But what ends up happening, right, is that as the churches are believing in original sin, their original sin meant that if a man and a woman were to consummate and to have a child, that sin is automatically passed on to that child. Right? Well, a lot of branches of Christianity don't believe that today. Right? And it's okay. That's not the point of this lesson. But what it did is it gave birth to that sex was associated with sin, when that wasn't the case. Now, because Augustine is so influential, right, right? And people were just reading about it. It's a stigma that has stuck inside of the churches today. And so this is kind of one of the reasons why so we have such a negative view about it. But let me tell you this, right? When you study the Bible is not afraid, right? And God is not afraid to communicate the topic of sex. So neither should the church. See, sex in God's context can be both positive and negative. And here's some scripture for you guys to kind of take a look at. When it's out of context, right, you can take a look at 2 Samuel, and we can see what happens when it's out of context between David and Bathsheba. Here, sex leads to actually people having adulterous relationships, people getting pregnant, saying, hey, I'm going to kill your husband now so that he doesn't realize that I knocked you up. And it leads down that road outside of context, the positive context. Another example that you can take a look at, right, is we can actually take a look at the men of Israel in Numbers 25, and it says they went whoring, right, with the daughters of Moab. Also, the kings, right, were given specific commands. Now, in the positive context, sex as related to creation, right, and God's way, well, you can read about that in Genesis. In fact, you can read about the creatures multiplying and spreading all over the earth in a positive way with Genesis 1:22 if you're taking notes. In 1:28, you can take a look at Adam and Eve, and they're told to be fruitful and multiply. Noah and his sons in chapter 9 are told, hey, go into the world. It's time for you to repopulate the world. Jacob in chapter 11. All of these had positive context in the association of sex. And in fact, the Bible talks about they knew them. They went into them. They know them. And really that description talks about inside the proper context that all the clothing would be removed. All the things that separated you would be removed. And you could see each other for everything that you were worth. The good, the bad, the flaws, the beauty. But it was a beautiful thing inside the context on which God created for us and how he wanted us to have that. So something else that you'll pick up too is during the biblical history is that there's two basically types of culture that are going on that we really know a lot about. One is the Near East culture, which is all the countries that are surrounding Israel and God's people, depending on the time. Sometimes they were called Israel, other times they were just God's people, right? Depending on where we're at in the narrative. But if you notice that in the Song of Solomon, I call it the Song of Solomon because that's how it was introduced to me, right? It wasn't until much later that other books started calling it Songs or Song of Songs, so just work with me on that. It wasn't until much later that gets discovered, but the writings are those of something of poetry, something of beauty, something of compassion, something that ties together. However, during that same time frame, right, and we're talking about conflicting God's context for sex versus the world's context for sex, are other writings. And these other writings in the Near East culture were very blunt. They're very physical, right? They were very descriptive. But in God's context, he talks about revealing in such a language, in such a way as to express the marriage relationship in a poetry, in a way of life. It's honorable. There's some kind of mystery between it, between the loves, right? Never pornographic. And it's private. It's something that happens, in God's context, happens between a husband and a wife in privacy. Now look, I'm going to tell you, sex is good because God created it. But it's good inside of the context of how God intended it to be used. See, the church, right, meaning us, we need to rein in this sexuality and rein in the topic of sex and control it again. Because the world has taken it over. Okay? In fact, what ends up happening, right, the world is so saturated with sex, it's in your internet, it's on your magazines, right? It's on your toilet cleaners, it's on commercials, it's all those things, right? And so I had asked you guys to fill those papers out and send them in. And on those topics, right, I said, what are the things that influence you? And I'm not going to survey them and take the time to add them up right now. But what I would tell you is that as I would add these up and I would take a look at these numbers, I'm willing to bet, only because we did it in a church setting, the Bible is probably going to hit around 6 to 10 as being influential on the average. What's going to be really top in the charts is going to be social media, advertisements, maybe the movies, and music. Typically, those are the ones that top the list. So let me ask you this question. If those are the things that are the most influential from you making your decisions, what impact does the garbage of sexuality outside the context of God have in making your everyday decisions? That's something for you to kind of look at yourself and to think about. How much influence, how am I being influenced on my thought and what I think about it? Because the world is saturated with it. I'm telling you right now, I challenge you to turn on a commercial, right? Just turn on a TV show or whatever and watch a TV show and tell me that somehow sexuality isn't being exploited. Otherwise, we wouldn't have, I'm telling you, I'm like this close to putting TikTok up on that screen. But I'm afraid it would offend some people in such a way that they couldn't have it. So if you want to see it afterwards, I'll show you. I monitor it, just so you know. I monitor it. I monitor TikTok. But if I showed you what these young ladies, and there's men on there too, young men on there too, but if I showed you what these young ladies feel they have to do to be able to get at the attention of a young man, you'd be like, wow. And you'd want to wag the finger, right? Oh, look at them sinners. Look at them sinners dancing half naked. But whose fault is it? Is it the fault of that kid or the fault of us? Because we don't talk about sex and teaching young men and young ladies what proper sexual context is. You know, I'd sooner point the finger at myself and say, you know, because I did not teach a child, because I was too afraid to talk about sex, even though the Bible's not afraid to talk about it, right? That child went on to do something like that. Well, what I'm saying is, can we make the statement, not in our house? Can we say that we're going to teach people about sex, but we're not going to allow it to be classified by the world? You see, the sex in the world and sexuality in the world, everybody knows that it's a natural thing, right? Sex is something created by God, and it's natural. What they've done, though, in the world, right, is they begin to label things, right? You know, they begin classifying it. And they take something that is the truth, right? And listen to me on this now. They take something that's the truth, that sex is a natural act, and they stretch that truth way further than it should be. See, here's a little interesting fact. Satan has no power to create. I'll say it again. Satan has no power to create anything in this world. But what he is awful good at is distorting things and changing the opinions and whispering in your ear. Well, Theo, I don't ever see an example of that in the Bible. Take a look at David when he did the census. It says that Satan whispered in his ear. And that's all it takes. See, because Satan can't create. He has to take what God has made and morph it and create it and turn it into something that's not of God. And that's what the world is doing. That's where he functions, right? That's why he talks about, you get these classifications of hetero or heterosexual and homosexual and some other form of sexuality. In fact, we classify that all these things in your high school, I'm willing to bet, whether or not you recognize it or not, there's probably a movement to recognize, hey, if you're a homosexual, it's okay for you to be as young as 12 years old and declare that you're homosexual or heterosexual or bisexual or any of these other things, that it's okay for you to do that and classify yourself as that. And it's okay for you to do this and to have this relationship in this context outside of what God would have intended it. And it's okay for you to do that. And oh, by the way, if you decide that you want to be abstinent, right, that you want to keep yourself pure until marriage, then there's something wrong with you. That's what the world is saying. Because we're not talking. We're not having the conversations that we need to be having about the subject of sex. said it, I'll say it again. Satan can take something and manipulate it, twist it, and turn it. But he can't create. So he takes what God has given us, it's good, and he twists it, and he turns it, and he places it in a way that the world can take advantage of it and be brutal toward it and not concern themselves with what God says. You know, I'll tell you is that a lot of times, and I sit here and I'm like, wow, and I've said it before, is that a lot of times people beat up on homosexuals. And they say, look at those homosexuals. They are sinful creatures. They are evil. But it's okay for me to have sex outside of marriage. It's okay for me to, have immorality. But the homosexuals, well, they're evil. Let me tell you something. Anything outside the context of God's plan for sex is sexual immorality. Let me take you through it. The Bible's pretty clear on it. Homosexuality is in Genesis 19, Leviticus 18, Romans 1, 1 Corinthians 6. I'm not beating up on the homosexuals. I'm just telling you that's where it's at. It's pretty clear. Check this out. Bestiality. Exodus 22, Leviticus 18, 20, and Deuteronomy 27. Necrophilia. Right? Deuteronomy 27. Adultery. Matthew. When we start talking about sex outside of God's plan, right, it doesn't matter what kind of sex it is. It's outside of God's plan. So what is God's plan? Well, God says, hey, between Adam and Eve, they're going to come together. They're going to become one flesh. Right? In Ephesians, there's this submissive language about the relationship of a husband and wife. Now look, I'm not having a lesson on am I okay in my relationship right now? And Theo, I need you to give me a list of things that I can and can't do. Because Theo ain't going to do that. All I'm going to tell you is that you need to search Scripture for yourself. We got to have the conversations because I'll tell you, not having the conversations leads to a lot of confusion. If the Bible is so open about talking about sexuality, then that requires us as the church to do the same. And then there's things like, well, Theo, the Bible also has people with multiple partners, right? Right? And I'm telling you right now, I couldn't know what it's like to be married to like 2 or 3 wives. I have trouble satisfying one, okay? So give me a multitude of them, and I'd be, woo! But also while the Bible does talk about some really good men that have multiple wives, I guess, ladies, you could say that for multiple husbands too, right? I mean, could you imagine how many toilet seats would be left up in the house if that's what happened? So, if the Bible's talking about, what about those relationships? Well, like I said with the kings, right, there's specific guidance given to the king. And understand is that the reason why we have 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, is because the kings represent the people. And the kings were told, do not have multiple wives. Don't do it. Because with multiple wives, right, comes along the ideal that guess what? Comes multiple problems. I mean, first off, it wasn't the original plan. In Deuteronomy 17, that's where you'll find the kings being warned. Hey, okay, you want kings, great, but do not have multiple wives. Right? And perhaps even, as we look in Timothy and we read about the qualifications of the elders, that they're saying, just look, man, you're going to be an elder, only have one wife. Because it's to avoid problems. So while there is examples of that, and God using good men and women, it wasn't the original plan. I'll tell you what multiple partners does in the context of today is it actually creates a jealousy, a rage, something that's upset. I'll tell you what, check this out, I'll prove it to you, right? Who knows somebody who's a non-Christian and they've been cheated on, right? Sex is so important, and it's such a covenant that even somebody who doesn't believe in Christ, somebody who's an agnostic, somebody who's an atheist, if somebody has sex with somebody else, they'll say they got cheated on, right? Because it is a covenant. And when it's broken, man, right, it creates all kinds of problems. That's what I'm telling you. If you want to avoid problems, right, young folks, you got to avoid sex. It's just the way it is. I mean, I'll tell you, you say, well, Theo, it's a natural desire, right? And I'm urging for it. Man, I got to have me some of that sex. Great. Save it for the marriage. Because anything that's worth having, that's good, is worth waiting for. Say it again. Anything that's worth having is worth waiting for. Don't allow yourself to get mixed up with all the craziness that is this. Because Paul says this. He says, hey, man, I wish everybody could be a swinging bachelor like me and hip, right? Hipster with a cool beard. No, he doesn't say that. But what he does say is, I wish everybody could be like me. I wish everybody could just realize that, hey, relationships are complicated and they cause problems. But I get it. Not everybody can. So in order to feed that urging, what does he say? That he says, well, then that's when a man takes a wife and a wife takes a man and a husband. But it's said in the proper context of things. So really then, if I talk to you about all these hazards of sex, right, and I say to you, hey, sex outside of marriage has emotional issues that are attached to it, right? Agreed or disagreed? Okay. Sex outside the marriage has the potential of getting STDs. Agreed or disagreed? Okay. Sex outside of the marriage has the consequence of possibly an unwanted pregnancy. Agreed or disagreed? Which then could lead to something even worse about the destruction of a child. You see how Satan kind of ramps that up? So what I'm asking you, though, then, if we understand all these consequences and all these side effects, why do people engage in it? And I got 4 reasons for you. Are you ready? 1, because it feels good. 2, because the media says it's okay for you to. 3, because they're searching for love or commitment and a way to fill the holes in their life. And 4, because they've twisted sex into an industry. Now look, what I want to do is back up a little bit there. Hey, it does feel good. I'm not, if God intended for sex to not feel good, he would have made it feel like you were getting stabbed by a knife. But that ain't the case. Okay? I'm just telling you. It feels good. But understand, if something is good, again, what do? We wait, because anything worth waiting, or anything that's really good is worth waiting for inside the proper context. The next thing I'd like to talk to you about real fast is this ideal of longing for a commitment. Because they're either searching for something. I already talked about the fact that media, you can see sex everywhere in the media. But this longing for commitment and to fill our lives, we oftentimes are going to fill ourselves with something trying to seek after what we really desire. And the true intimacy that most human beings, because you're designed and created in the image of God, the true intimacy that you're looking for is a relationship with God. It takes time to develop it and make it special. And so what ends up happening is a lot of times people are depressed and they're sad and they're upset and they want to belong and they want to participate. And so what ends up happening, and I'm telling you guys, I was one of these dudes that silver tongue. Man, I could tell you what you wanted to hear in high school. But my only intention, right, was to get to have a girl to have sex with me. That was my intention. Now, were those girls, some of those girls, right, they were thinking that I was in love with them and that I wanted to commit to them and I wanted to be with them. So I told them what they needed to hear. I'm confessing this to you because this is the reality of life. Because again, nobody talked to me about sex. Nobody told me that, hey, it's okay to have these urges. And believe me, if you're a 16-year-old guy, you got urges. Okay? Don't make eye contact with me if you don't want to, but you got urges. But if you can't talk about those urges and the format isn't open for you to talk about those urges and those desires that you have, that means you got to figure it out on your own, or listen to your buddies or your cousins tell you, oh yeah, this is what you got to say to her if you want to have sex, instead of honoring her. Let me say this right now, ladies. And this goes specifically to the ladies. And guys, you need to listen to me because this is the advice I'm giving them. If a man doesn't honor you, if he doesn't place you on a pedestal, if he doesn't look at you and say, you are everything that I want to be with, you are my desire. If he doesn't place you before all others, If he doesn't look at you and say, I'm gonna honor you in marriage. And if he tries to ever convince you to do something you don't want to do, then he doesn't really care about you. Listen to me, man. Satan knows how to take things and twist them. He knows how to take the urgings of a young man or a young woman and twist them in such a way that it creates sexual immorality and problems. Because he doesn't want you to have one problem. He wants you to have a multitude of problems so that it takes your focus off of Jesus. It's just what he does. And sex is just one of those powerful things that they can do that. So when we're searching for a relationship, search for your relationship with God first. I'll tell you is that I came to the point that I said, that's it, man. I know I was raised better, and nobody even talked to me about it, but I came to this point in my life that I said, what I am doing isn't right. I didn't have any scripture to back it up at that time. But what I had in my life was, I believe, to be the Holy Spirit moving in me and saying, hey, you know what, man? I'm convicting you of this. Because what you're doing and how you're acting is not correct. Right? So I had to reevaluate. And only after reevaluating and saying, this is the desire that I have is to chase after God. And I wasn't even doing it good. Right? I wasn't doing good Christianity. I was still messing up all the time like I do today. But after I decided that that was going to be my desire first, then I ended up meeting this girl in a parking lot. Right? And she propositioned me for the phone. And so I loaned her my phone. See, you guys thought that was going somewhere else. But no, she propositioned. So then I married my wife, right? And, we celebrated 20 years this year. And man, it's been a wild ride. But it's so beautiful inside the context of how God intended it to be for us. The other thing I talked about, and I've talked about this before, is this, not necessarily the media, but how sex has been turned into an industry. Man, you want to see something crazy? Go on Amazon, right? Because I know everybody loves shopping Amazon. Okay? It's a way of life, I get it. But just type in sex style, right? And what'll pop up for you are these sex styles that you can buy on Amazon. And guess what? They're not full-grown adult sex styles. What they are is they're little kid sex styles, a lot of them, that are dressed up like little schoolgirls and stuff like that. But that's how Satan's has taken sex and made it part of the industry. You guys with me? It's pretty sick, right? It's pretty sick. But why does somebody think that it's okay to do that? Because we haven't talked about it. We haven't made it open to have these conversations. I'm telling you right now, we need to be more open about talking about sex and the context of it as God would have. I could get up here doom and gloom you all day long and be like, if you have premarital sex, you're going straight to? That's right. Hellbound. Congratulations. But we focus so much on the negative instead of the positive. Remember I talked to you about the Near East culture poetry, how explicit it was, pornographic in its language, versus how God's people penned it with mysticism, privacy, and honor. There's a conflict there. And we as church have to be able to identify that and teach those things. Sex in the right context is a good thing. Sex can be a holy form of worship to God. One of the problems that they were having in the temples is that they would have, like in pagan temples and stuff, there was prostitution and all these things going on inside these pagan temples. And they took what was beautiful in God's and they morphed it. But inside of a marriage, inside of a husband and a wife, a man and a woman making this commitment, this beautiful bond, inside of that commitment, God is honored because we fulfill his command. One of the first commands, be fruitful and multiply. It can be something very beautiful. But you know what? We have to be honest. We have to be willing to talk about sex. I said it before. If sex was such a bad thing, right, and it was evil, then God wouldn't have designed our bodies to connect like they do to produce a child and to multiply. He wouldn't have made it pleasurable. But he did. So then sex in itself is not a bad thing. In fact, it's a good thing, as I said before. But we got to teach about the correct context of it. I said it before, I'll say it again. Satan cannot create anything. But he can sure take things and morph them into what he wants them to be. And that's what he's done with sex. I wish all these great ideas came from me, but, Logan Stark, a lot of you guys know him, man. Me and him have had some awesome conversations. I'm like, wow, man, come on, because I forget, I'm not a 16-year-old kid anymore. I forget what it was like. I forget what it's like to be a young man and have these urges. And so being able to talk with Logan and hearing his thoughts on it has helped me kind of communicate and say, hey, you know what, Theo? You need to kind of revisit this and remember those things that you went through. See, here's what I'm going to tell you. If you're an older gentleman and there's younger gentlemen in your life, you need to talk with them. You need to remember what it was like to be 16. Right? And you need to teach them. If you're a father and you have kids, you need to protect them and remind them and teach them and have open conversations with them. If you're a mother, you need to have open conversations with your children. Don't close them off. If you're an older gentleman or an older lady and you see that young lady struggling and hurting, right? If you're an older lady and you see the younger lady struggling, take them underneath your arm and talk to them. Spend time with them. Because you got to remember what it was like for you. And I'm telling you, this is not a sermon saying you're condemned. I'm not, that's between you and God. But it is a sermon about having a conversation about something that God created. And making sure that your youth, that you understand that it needs to be honorable. Here's a lot of things that I've just, kind of questions that come up. A lot of times young people want to even know, what does the Bible even say about sex? I'm willing to bet that there's young folks in here that didn't even know the Bible even addresses sex. It wouldn't surprise me because in group settings, I've seen that before. Here's a great question. How can we create the environment for the church to be more open to talking about sex? Is sexual immorality only committed through intercourse? A lot of your young folks, they want to know these things. What are going to be the boundaries? What are going to be the limitations? So what you're saying is, as long as I stop right here and I don't go past this point, then guess what? It's okay. But once I actually have intercourse, well, now I've crossed over. So that means everything that I do before intercourse is okay. I don't know. Those are conversations I need you guys to have with the youth. I'll tell you, it's kind of like driving a car. A car is a very powerful thing, right? But you don't get to get your license until when? 16. And the reason why you don't get to get your license until you're 16 is because the state has determined at 16 years of age, you're mature enough to get behind the wheel of a 3,000-pound vehicle that could smash or destroy somebody. Right? Sex is just as powerful. If it's used wrong, it can be destructive and hurtful. It can destroy you for the rest of your life. And that's any form of sexual immorality. It will have consequences for life. I'm telling you, because I've told you guys before, like pornography is an issue for me, right? It is. It's the bottom line. And it has affected, when my cousins gave me that stuff when I was 12 years old, it has affected me the rest of my life. And nobody talked to me about it. Nor did I feel I could talk to anybody. Sexual immorality and sex is a 3,000-pound vehicle that can do all kinds of destruction. And so you need to make those decisions now. So when we start talking about, well, how far is too far, you need to have that decision made before the situation arises. For some people, it's like, I'm not going to hold hands with anybody until I'm married. Cool. I honor that. For some people, it's say, I'll hold hands and we can kiss, but that's it. And the boundaries can go left and right. But if you don't have any boundaries, if you haven't talked with your children about this, if you haven't been able to give guidance, I don't care if they're your kids or not. I'm not talking about the birds and the bees, but I'm just saying being open to talk to them. Then they're in that 3,000-pound vehicle, cruising back and forth, right, on the road with no boundaries. It's better to at least have a boundary and say, this is what we can do and this is what we can't do. And so that when the situation arises and the heat of the passion and the moment begins, the things don't get carried away because you've already made the decision, this is how I'm going to react. Those are the conversations that we need to have. And again, I am without a shadow of a doubt know that there's great parents in here that'll have those conversations with their kids. But the church has to be willing to have them too. Here's a great one. I'm not going to read all these, but this is another thing I kind of jotted down and I was thinking about, right? Does the urge for sex get better as you, or get lessened as you get older? Right? I mean, man, it is such a powerful thing. So as I get older, does the urges get lesser? Now look, I've given you conversations and topics to kind of get the conversation started. What I want to tell you is that we cannot look at sex as a bad thing. It was good because God created it, and He intended for human beings to do it. But we need to protect the context of it. You know, I'll tell you what, ladies, and some of you have heard me say this and some of you haven't, right? A precious jewel is buried deep in the ground, but a common rock is found on the surface. Don't attract a man. Don't use your bodies, right? And this goes for you too, guys. So listen up. You guys aren't exempt from this. Don't use your bodies as a way to attract somebody. Honor your bodies because God has made you to be beautiful in His image. So honor that. Okay? Honor that. I'm not saying at the end of the day you can't wear shorts and I'm not interested in all these rules. If you develop a relationship with God and you honor God, all these rules just fall into place and they're not rules. They're just part of relationships and how you honor God. But honor yourselves. Honor yourselves. And protect yourselves. Have the conversations that you need. All right. Listen, we've talked a lot today, okay? If you have questions, by all means, I'm always here to be able to answer those questions for you the best ability that I can. There's some things I'm still trying to figure out, guys, so I'll probably come to somebody else and say, hey, can you help me answer this? But we at least have to be willing to have the conversation. And as the church, if we're not willing to have the conversation, then what we're doing, we're going to allow our silence to allow Satan to run wild through this world and let them determine the context of sex. Thank you.